Looks like we're headed into a new era of college sports, but what does the House settlement mean for Auburn sports specifically?
This is the Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by Golden's Cast Iron. C-Dub, Ike Joe, Be Will, Mike G. You are now listening to
Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR and use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights. Code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Summer is almost here. You want to be outside with your family, making memories around the grill or just getting in shape. Work out, grill out, chill out with our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Guys, join the War Report community. $5.99 a month will get you there. We got lots of great content coming for you guys with SEC Media Days upcoming. We'll be live from Atlanta from the College Football Hall of Fame, bringing you guys all your favorite interviews. Once in a lifetime time for us to be able to sit down and talk with Commissioner Greg Sankey. I ran into him a lot during the NCAA tournament, but with the House settlement passing, I've got some brand new questions for the commissioner. I know you guys got some questions too. Drop those questions. We'll see if we can't get them in for Mr. Sankey at Media Days. But either way, easier to get that question in if you're a part of our community. You can also help us grow our community by hitting that gifted membership button. Let's see if we can get 20, as always, given away on today's live show. We got an hour and 15 minutes to do so, guys. So smash that gifted membership button. I want to thank our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use or to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. And our friends at the Vibe Vault, you can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. Get fresh for the weekend with the Rogue Shop, with the Vibe Vault. I'm sorry. You can do both of those things. But also check us out on podcasts, guys. Every single podcast. We are there dropping lots of great audio-only content for you guys. If you haven't been checking out the podcast, we've got some cool segments going on over there this week. So subscribe on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. We are there with the Auburn Express, Uptempo, College Loop, Just a Sec, and the War Reporter Gaming Channel, bringing you guys lots of great original content.
Yes, indeed.
Shouts out to the Uptempo podcast. I'm digging the new logo there.
Yeah. A little change to the things over there, up tempo. Shout out to our guy Dustin over there holding it down. All right, guys. Before we get into what we ultimately are here to talk about, which is this House settlement that is all of the buzz around collegiate sports right now, just want to give a quick shout out to Auburn Baseball. Didn't get the outcome that we wanted here at the end of the season. But hosting their first super regional ever, Butch Thompson, an amazing job after a disappointing previous year, getting the team to host the regional and then subsequently hosting the super regional. Shout out to guys like Cooper McMurray and Ike Irish, who likely are not going to be back in an Auburn uniform next season. Derek Fabian, the transfer that came over. A lot of great things happening with Auburn baseball. A lot of promise if they can keep these young freshmen that are on that team who did amazingly well in their freshman season with Auburn. Bub Terrell, Freilich. I'm gonna miss somebody if I start naming names and don't say all the names that I need to, but the freshmen were doing a really great job for Auburn this season. And it's a promising future there for Auburn baseball, but shout out to them. And hopefully next season will be a stepping stone towards the next level. They're already got some guys transferring in to help with the pitching staff. So much appreciated to the job Butch Thompson did. Mike, you were there at the super regionals. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, shout out to the Auburn fans that showed up. It was a great atmosphere. The changes that they made to Plainsman Park have been incredible. I don't know if you guys saw, but on the roof of the hitting facility, they made that into seating. And so you got seating on the roof in right field. You got seating in outfield. They put seating over the Green Monster. It was
Can I just make a proposal that they call the seating on the roof over there that they just started the Irish Pub? Just in honor of Ike Irish, since he's been amazing. Just call it the Irish Pub over there, and that's going to be special seating that they put up there. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I liked that fans filled those seats up. I did run into some fans outside that wanted to be at the game, but talked about ticket prices being kind of high. These are listeners of our show, and people were in the garages, on the garage decks. Just it was a great atmosphere. Hats off to Coastal Carolina. A lot of people underestimated them. And they came in here winning, I think, like 22 straight coming into the super regional. Just a really good baseball team. I thought Auburn acquitted themselves admirably in game one to fight back and push that game to extra innings. Just too many unforced errors. They ran out of juice at the wrong times. The bats went cold at the wrong times. But I think that they should be proud of what they accomplished this season. Right? They hosted a super regional for the first time ever. And that's definitely something to be, I think, to be celebrated. Now, we're talking about the House settlement today. A lot of things in that bill is going to help Auburn baseball moving forward. They've long since had to deal with limits on scholarships and things of that nature. So hopefully the things that we are about to talk about today will help continue to push that program forward.
Yeah. See, you had any thoughts on Auburn baseball?
Man, listen, with Butch Thompson, Bruce Pearl, Spring Athletics, just to name a few of our amazing head coaches. Spring Athletics is up at Auburn, and it was good to see Auburn bounce back after a disappointing season last year. Mike, you alluded to the expansion and the renovations of Plainsman Park. It looks good, man. Like, looking at it on TV, like, kudos to them for a job well done.
It looked amazing, didn't it?
It looks incredible. Like, I first looked at it, I was like, are they in Auburn? Where are they? Like, I wasn't quite sure where they were at first, but the year that they had bouncing back, again, you expected this with a coach like Butch Thompson, and there's a lot to be proud of with this team. Again, Coastal Carolina is on an amazing run, right? They're the story right now in college baseball. So no shame in Auburn falling to them. But again, the future is bright for this program. And with Butch Thompson at the helm, I expect even more greater things in the future.
For sure. You already talked about it, Mike, but what we're going to discuss today is going to impact the future of these programs. You've got a lot of great coaches, as you just mentioned, Caesar, that are doing great work that have nothing to do with the largest revenue generation sport that is at Auburn University, which is college football. And those teams need support. This is a step in that direction. There's a poll up right now, even though I spelled it incorrectly for you guys. Is this a disastrous move for college sports? Is it a step in the right direction? Or are you just undecided about what's going on? Go ahead and answer that poll right now in the comments. But let's take a look at the NCAA House settlement that just took place recently. Supposed to be going into effect at the top of the month of July. $2.77 billion settlement over 10 years. NCAA and Power Five conferences, which really the Power Four, SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, agreed to pay former and current athletes for damages from the previous rules prohibiting NIL compensation. Those payments begin fall of 2025. So they're retroactively giving money to athletes who could not make money before. And this brings an interesting thought about the whole Diego Pavia situation, where he was like, I couldn't get NIL before, I deserve another year eligibility. Now they should be able. This is the Auburn portion of me hating just a little bit. You gonna get paid for that time, brother. Go ahead and do something else with your life. Anyway, but he missed the draft already, so they're not gonna do that to him. Revenue sharing going forward is going to start happening. Schools can share up from $20 to $22 million annually in revenue with athletes. This is not a cap, but it's a guideline for what they're going to be doing. And I think that 21.5 is something right around the number where Auburn is landing. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Mike G, on that. The compensation is in addition. So this is not remove NIL, but it's in addition to NIL, meaning players can earn both payments from school and third-party endorsements. Schools will need to reallocate budgets. This is impacting on like Title IX and administrative costs for non-revenue sports. Title IX compliance will force schools to balance revenue sharing across men and women's sports. The impact to the transfer portal, the new dynamic could emerge where schools are offering, or maybe schools offering more may gain a competitive competitive advantage, and smaller programs may struggle to keep pace. And that's a big portion of this. This House settlement is really for the big boys, right? If you're a group of 5 school, if you're one of the smaller schools, this doesn't impact you at all. This is the guys playing in the Power 4 conferences that are going to have this going on. Initial thoughts about just this entire thing, and let's get into the minutia here in just a minute, but just thoughts on what this means for college sports. And I'll let anybody start on that.
Oh yeah. I do want to say, yeah, I mean, I think it does have an impact on the little guys because they can do, it just is not going to have the impact that a lot of people thought that it was going to have. I've long since held the position that this was only going to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. The schools with the money are always are the same. It's always been the schools that have had the money. Now, what it may do is it might help schools who have already had money and are now being allowed to spend it in this way catch up to the traditional powerhouses in certain sports, because just because you have money doesn't mean that you compete in every sport. And those schools will have a chance, I think, to catch up even more. Like schools like BYU, right? Like they've got old money. BYU has old money, and now that they're going to be allowed to spend it a little bit more directly and more freely, you might see them catch up with some of the more, the powerhouses of today, right? In sports like football and basketball. That being said, kind of re-explaining the numbers for everybody because we've touched on this on and off. This first year is just the floor.
Right.
That cap will grow every year
4%
as it passes, right? But the most important thing, and the thing that was holding up the House settlement, was the walk-ons and the scholarship limits. The judge, Judge Claudia, said, hey, go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to not screw a bunch of kids out of scholarships or the ability to be able to walk on. So what they're giving those athletes what they're calling designated student athletes, DSAs. So if you got kicked off your team because your program was preemptively trying to get under that scholarship limit, they're saying you are protected for the rest of your college career. Eventually, schools are going to have to get under the new limits. We'll talk about what those limits are later in the show. But ultimately, there's a little bit more flexibility in how they spread the wealth around, guys. So, the scholarships, the Olympic sports are gaining about, I think it's like 75 additional scholarships that they'll have to decide. The schools will decide, hey, we want more scholarships in gymnastics, or we want more scholarships in certain sports. And they're going to have to draw from what is a $2.5 million fund of that $20.5 million to create those scholarships. I like that the judge sent them back to the drawing board to not screw walk-ons. Have been such a great part of college athletics since the inception of college athletics. I do not want to see those moments go away where the coach on a scholarship because he was not highly recruited, but he worked his butt off in the program. We've seen that happen at Auburn time and time again when Auburn social media releases a video of a kid who's been busting his butt for 2 years, 3 years, and then finally gets a scholarship in his senior year. I want those moments to go away from college athletics. This judge is protecting that for student athletes and at places, like Auburn in years to come. So, outside of that, the other adjustment that a lot of schools are going to be making is UCF, for example, eliminated their collective in anticipation of just kind of consolidating the efforts down to what they're calling their competitive success fund. Now, that you do that because you don't expect that you're going to be able to fill that $20.5 million cap. On the Victory isn't going anywhere. They said, look, we got 20.5 and then some for you, which essentially once we fill that cap, we need On to Victory to cut these additional deals with athletes once we hit our cap. Schools like Auburn, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, they're going to fill that like that, and they still need additional revenue sources to be able to pay athletes from. As that cap grows, we'll see if those collectives remain relevant. But for right now, at the bigger schools, at least, I don't think the collectives are going anywhere. I think they have a use, and schools will continue to employ those as kind of like a second arm of NIL. So that's where we're at right now. Look, July 1st, they're gonna start paying athletes.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this question. At a place like Auburn, and I got my thoughts, Ike, but at a place like Auburn, I thought about softball. I thought about women's basketball, and we talked about how in order for them to be able to compete with some of the South Carolinas in women's basketball, like some of these bigger programs that are clearly funding their program, does this help those programs knowing that you have this $20.5 million pot and then you have your NIL collective?
Yes, I think it does. Look, for softball, for example, right? Like they had 12 scholarships. That was their previous scholarship limit was 12, right? The average softball roster size is 21, and the new roster size is 25, right? But my understanding is they're going to be able to offer more than 12 scholarships to softball now. So it does help them if you have more scholarships available. Same thing, the state of Alabama has had this handicap in baseball where they've only been able to offer partial scholarships to baseball players. Then NIL came along and they said, hey, Butch said, great. Now we can get NIL to fill the difference between what their partial scholarship is covering and what's left to pay just for them to attend school. That's crazy. So, yeah, like I said, we'll see how they spread the love around. As I understand it, there's no set designation for how many of those additional scholarships have to go to any particular sport. The schools are given autonomy in terms of how they distribute those scholarships out. But I think it will help. And what I'm interested to see, Caesar, it's going to show you how much does Auburn care about other sports? A lot of schools, not just Auburn, outside of football and men's basketball. Now, they've set aside money for the Olympic sports, but unfortunately for softball and tennis and some of these other programs, men's basketball is part of that, and they may eat a lot of that extra. When Bruce Pearl starts throwing his weight around and says, all right, I need this $3 million athlete, how much of that is he going to be allowed to eat up? Or, are they going to find other ways to fund what he needs while guaranteeing a higher floor for some of these other Olympic sports? Ike and I, we cover a lot of women's basketball. And the question that we've always had about the university as it pertains to that program is, do they care about it enough to do the things that it's going to take in today's women's basketball to make them competitive? Yeah, a lot of people shit on Johnny Harris and what she was able to accomplish, not realizing she got Talia Scott and Deanna Gaston, girls who were top 10 scoring type athletes in women's basketball, to come to Auburn for almost no money. That's not sustainable. Not when you're going up against Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey every year and whoever's at Tennessee. So, I mean, look, man, football is going to eat. I think at this point, we can all agree men's basketball is going to eat. But, women's basketball has long, like what Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese were able to do for the women's game. I think Auburn has done a poor job capitalizing on that momentum. And here's a chance to reset and pump some life into it. And you'd be surprised how little of the pot they actually need to be competitive. $300,000-$400,000 in women's basketball would make the world of difference. And if you're sitting here and you're asking yourself, you're like, Mike, they don't have that? The answer is no. At least not prior to the settlement. So I'll be interested to see if they set this floor for them now.
And I mean, the landscape of that is going to change as well. So let's talk a little bit about just kind of the generalities of this. Well, Caesar, you said you had some thoughts on in general, like not specific to the impact of the sports. I'm going to let you get to that before we move on. Go ahead.
The man, that it just sounds to me as though the rich are getting richer.
Right.
And I'm curious what's going to happen, because I heard there's a commission that the Power Four conferences are beginning to establish, and we're seeing the NCAA really beginning to just wither away, right? It's always been a laughing stock. We've always poked fun at the NCAA for how they have just kind of failed to manage this whole thing in terms of compensating players and paying players. But it almost seems as though they're being phased out because these Power Four conferences are establishing a governing body for these improprieties and these issues that come up. And so I'm curious as to what does the future hold for the SEC and the Big Ten, like the two conferences that sit at the top. What does this do for conference realignment? What does this do in terms, like, what is the fallout from this? And I'm curious just to see how this pans out. When I look at schools like a Florida State, schools like a Clemson, are they going to remain in the ACC when it's all said and done, right? And so I'm curious to see what happens here. And again, this is just the amateurism of college sports is dead. It's been dead, but this was the eulogy of sorts for that. And so I'm curious to see what new era of college sports this ushers in.
Caesar, let me add this because you mentioned the ACC. The House settlement designates the ACC and recognizes the ACC as a Power 5 conference.
Do they?
Specific, that language in there is specifically for them. They recognize the ACC, the dying on life support ACC, as a Power 5 conference. They have not left them out in the cold in this.
Are you talking about the Pac-12 when you mean the Pac-12?
Pac-12, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Pac-12.
Yeah. No, Pac-12 is mentioned in this for sure. They've got some new member institutions that are coming on board with the Pac-12 this coming season. I think Boise State is one of them. So some of the folks from the Mountain West are transitioning over. They haven't met the minimum requirement for a power conference as far as member institutions yet, but you are correct. They specifically in this language had the Power 5, including the Pac-12 in there. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that happens.
Interesting.
They threw them a lifeline. Let me tell you something, because I have always been a Pac-12 hater. I just don't. I think that every commissioner they had has failed at that job. I mean, you're talking a masterclass in how not to run a business. The Pac-12. Right? Like they are behind every evolution trend ever in college sports. Right? Always reacting, trying to catch up, never ahead of anything, and just cutting bad deals, man.
Yeah,
they cut bad deals every year.
The one thing I'll and this has nothing to do with the House settlement, but just kind of on the point of like commissioners making good deals. The thing that you have to applaud the Big 12, the Big 10 commissioner and then Greg Sankey for is they figured out the best way to put their conferences in good situations, particularly with media rights, because that's the way that you make money in this sport. And that's something I don't think the ACC, Big 12, and specifically the Pac-12 had the worst media deal. Like the Pac-12 network, I've been on this rant before, so I'm not going to go long, is so trash. It was a terrible network. I hated it. I hated every single time they forced me to watch an Auburn game competing against one of those schools.
What was it when Auburn basketball had to play USC or something like that on the road?
Yeah. The women played Oregon, and I had to get on there to try to watch
it was
that.
Awful. Yeah, it was awful every single time. Every single time. I was just like, who are these people talking, and why are they so terrible at this? I hated it. I hated it. I hated everything about it, and I just wanted to go away forever. So whatever. Anyway, back to the thing at hand. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of all of this, and you talked about it a little bit, Mike, was the governing body, right? Because the Power 4 conferences that exist right now will take over regulation. I'm reading this directly from a CBS Sports article of player compensation issues. They plan to create a new organization called the College Sports Commission and will hire a CEO soon after the settlement. So this is going to be coming up soon. So there will be news about who will be the new CEO of the College Sports Commission. Look out for them hiring somebody like Nick Saban, by the way, who's been inserting himself into these NIL conversations pretty heavily. But
I've heard names of them throwing out. I think it was a former college, I'm not college baseball, but MLB commissioner. I can't think of his name right now. It's escaping me,
but the power conference schools will be pressured to sign on to the new organization or risk expulsion from their conferences. So new governing body to make sure everything is on the up and up and regulate how these payments are supposed to be happening is supposed to be going into effect very soon. Again, to try to get ahead of this July 1st implementation. TKC is the Major League Baseball legal guy who's supposed to be potentially in the running for this.
Yes. Still need a name though.
Yeah, and then there's a portion of this that they're using to now. There's supposed to be a more intense scrutiny for the NIL contributions because anything that's over like $50, I think, or $6, I forgot what the number was. They've got to have some sort of approved situation for that. So it's going to be very interesting. But just thoughts on the regulation portion of this, because I feel like this is why I said, to your point earlier, Mike, the NCAA had done such a poor job of this regulatory process before that now they're being essentially ushered out of this process completely when it comes to this new revenue situation. What is the role of the NCAA in all of this? And what do you think about this new governing body that's supposed to be taking place to help regulate all of these payments that are going out to these athletes?
Yeah, the next step is you have to figure out some sort of, like when we start talking about enforcement, you got to figure out some kind of penalty system for people who are not abiding by the rules. Now, I can't imagine what that looks like right now because they're given so much latitude to do so much that I don't. But you know how it is. I mean, somebody's going to try to cheat whatever rules are in place.
For sure.
To do a little bit more.
That's why you've got to have some sort of regulatory system that says, hey, these are the rules as everybody playing by. Because like right now, the NIL has been such a wild west because of regulations at the state level that there's just never been a way to rein in what's happening and how it was happening and what was the structure in which you could put the, like, oh, well, if you play at this school, we're going to give you a free car, like type stuff, right? Like it's just, how do schools compete in different states where that's absolutely illegal to do, right? But anyway, I cut you off. Continue what you're saying.
Well, as an investigative body, the NCAA does not have investigative, like they don't have subpoena power. They've lacked teeth in terms of enforcement for so many years. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to come up with a system where there is a body that has teeth, can dole out real and serious punishments and hold people accountable. This system doesn't work if the member institutions don't sign on to the accountability structure,
right?
To say, hey, we will abide by these rules. And, you know, I got to imagine, quite honestly, with the way that it's being set up now, there aren't a ton of limits on the guys at the top. So it's really I think, going to be the big boys telling the little guys, hey, you make sure you don't try to cheat your way to where we are. We already got all the money. We already have all the power. That's not different.
Do you see them potentially defecting, Mike?
No.
The smaller schools?
No. The bigger schools.
Defecting
never.
From I mean, I think the issue with even attempting to defect is that portion that I just read where they're going to try to force, if you don't sign, then they're going to try to force you out of the conference. And it's just like, all right, well, you're an independent school now, and you know, but the question happens with, for instance, like a Notre Dame out there who is an independent, like where do they fit into this kind of thing, right? So I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that if you have already got money, then you're not worried about much right now.
Right.
It's the guys who are trying to catch up to the money side that are going to be trying to figure out ways to get things done. But you know, ultimately, it just needs to make sense. It needs to make sense for the student athlete. It needs to make sense for the institutions, because what you're going to have too is a lot of guys on a lot of the schools, the institutions on the lower end of this that are going to be struggling to keep up. You know, they're going to have a financial strain on them, where this is where the gap between the haves and the have-nots just continues to grow. That's it. You know, in my talks with student athletes, it never ceases to amaze me how deluded some of them are about how much money is actual available and the rules around that money. You know, at some schools, there may be an endless pot of money. At other schools, there's a cap to what you can get
seemingly
done.
Endless, right? Just because it's more money than you can fathom doesn't mean it's endless.
Yeah, it's not endless, right? Yeah. I would say this: when NIL came into fruition, Bruce Pearl was given a choice between NIL or a new basketball facility. That should tell you already there's a cap on what they can do. The fact that they were making him choose between one or the other. He said, all right, give me the NIL, because if I can win enough, then hopefully we can revisit this other conversation, which exactly where they're at.
Yeah, but I think he's proven, all right, you give me some money to get some ballers, we'll put you a quality product on. But now let's talk about how we can upgrade these facilities. I think that conversation is viable now.
As we speak right now, the men's basketball offices are being renovated. Right. Like, so if you don't know what that's like, if you've ever gone into Neville into the scholarship entrance, which is that entrance that faces Jordan Hare Stadium with a big parking lot. When you go in, you go up to the second level, the basketball offices are right there to your left. For, the last few decades, women's basketball and men's basketball have split those offices. Now, women's basketball is being moved to the other side of the facility where the volleyball offices are, and the men are taking over that entire second floor area, which overlooks their practice gym as well too. So, he's getting some of what he wanted, but you would have thought that after the first Final Four and Jabari Smith and Isaac Okoro, that he had earned the right to say, hey, look, give me some of these things I want. So if there are caps on him on what he can spend, of course there are going to be caps on what the athletes can get. Right? Like I'm telling you, a lot of these kids think, I just want 10,000 more a month. All right, cool. They may have that, but do they have that for 100 players?
Right.
Right. I mean, it's the reality is going to start to set in, and some schools that might even be a discussion. Schools like Texas A&M, they cut a nearly $80 million check to fire a coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Texas Tech, I don't know if you guys saw the reports this offseason about how they had a billionaire that came in and just dropped like $30 million in bread on portal players.
He hooking them up
for multiple sports. They went out there and they said, we're going to spend our way into being competitive again. It's going to be very interesting.
I've seen that. Have you seen the new facility too?
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. That new football facility they built at Texas Tech is
they got
insane.
old money, new money, oil money. They got everything out there. And so I'm this situation, and there was somebody in our comments recently, Caesar, that was arguing with Ike about whether Alabama had more money than Auburn.
Let's hold off on that, because I want to get to that on the other side of the break, because I do want to talk economic impact towards Auburn specifically, and that's where I want to intro into that conversation after we get to a few of these viewer comments. You guys, if you're out there, we're getting to your comments here, and then we're going to pivot to Auburn specifically, but you're watching the Weekend Tailgate. Make sure that you like this video, share this video, drop those comments if you're watching this later, and tell us your thoughts on all of this stuff. We will be right back after this quick word from our sponsors. This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelikaRageroom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com.
As just previously mentioned, I want to thank our title sponsor, goldenscastiron.com. Visit them at goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weight. Code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. The summer is here, guys. You want to be outside making memories around the grill, or just getting in shape with some Golden's Cast Iron weights. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Also, visit our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code Rapport to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. So please visit them for all your herbal supplement needs. And our friends at the Vibe Vault. Get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. If you're in the Phoenix City, Columbus area, or if you're in the Auburn area and you don't mind making the drive down, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. They've been letting me know you guys have been coming in and saying, hey, Is this the place that these guys are talking about at the Rapport? And the answer is yes. It's a real clean barber shop. It's a great experience. They got great barbers there. I trust nobody but the guys at the Vibe Vault with this lineup. You should. Neither. So go visit them, please. Guys, check us out on podcasts, every single podcast platform. We are there bringing you guys lots of great audio-only content. We are doing fantastic work on the podcast, not only as creators, but as a community. You guys have been signing up. You've been listening in droves. You've been hitting that downloads button. Please don't stop. Turn on automatic downloads on our podcast. You have no idea how much this helps our business. So whether you have time to listen immediately or not, it doesn't matter. Just hit subscribe, follow, whatever is applicable on wherever you listen to your podcast, and make sure those automatic downloads are turned on. We appreciate our community for helping us grow on podcasts. So all the podcasts you see here, audio is important. A lot of you guys don't have time to sit down in front of a computer or stare at a phone screen. You want to be able to listen to the show in the background. Everything you see on YouTube is put into podcast format. As long as it's not behind our paywall, and even some of that stuff behind the paywall, you can eventually get on audio only. So we're making sure we serve you guys wherever you're at. Please help us keep that work going by subscribing on podcasts.
Let's grab some of the comments before we get into the next segment of the show. TK hits us with a few comments. We're going to go through them one by one. He says, no guardrails for spending by the schools on their sports, though. They can spend where they want to. Title IX lawsuits will be filed, guaranteed. They are coming. Thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, this is correct, right? This is something we just talked about. There's no saying that they have to dedicate any amount to any sport. They can decide of the 18 million that will be available. So if you're confused by that 20.5 number, it's 20.5, but 2.5 of it has to go to provide additional scholarships. But beyond that, there is no regulations. There's no saying you got to give a certain amount to gymnastics or whatever. And then of the 18 that's left, they can spend it all on football if they want to right now. So I imagine there are going to be some fair and equitable rules that are going to come to say, and hey, are women's sports being left out of this? Are certain institute, because I'm telling you what's going to happen is these institutions are going to lean towards supporting the programs that drive revenue that already allowed those sports to exist. That's the cold, hard reality of the situation we're in right now. If you don't have football at most of these schools, guys, you don't have softball, you don't have tennis, you don't have equestrian, you don't have all these other things. So you need football to make money. And right now, football is subsidizing all the other sports.
Let's get to a super chat here by Mr. Gibson. Appreciate you, sir, for your support. He says, how did we get here? Saban made $9 million and owns 3 Mercedes dealerships, but players can't do a Dreamland commercial.
Well, they can now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, his point here is that players, and this has been my point for a long time too, is if you feel as if, well, they get a scholarship, that should be enough, is fair when there are people literally making millions upon millions of dollars off of that product, and I get in trouble because somebody gave me a free hamburger, then you don't understand how wrong this is.
Right.
Like there needed to be some change. Now, I don't love the direction that it went, but I do love that they started walking down that road, and maybe the guardrails now can help us get back on track when there still needs to be additional guardrails. But yeah, the reason we are in this place is because somebody somewhere said, this isn't fair. All right, let's
if you've ever worked for a company where they can claim your intellectual property as company work product because you developed something while you work for that company, and then they take that and they make millions off of it, while you like, wait a minute, I developed that. That's my work product. That's what these athletes feel like. You're taking something that we developed to some extent, which is our talent, and you're making millions off of it while telling me I can only take what you decide to pay me.
Right. And if the only frame of reference that you have for this are the athletes who then subsequently go to professional sports and then go become millionaires because of that, you're losing 90% of the argument there, because a bunch of folks aren't going pro in this,
right?
And they're never going to be able to capitalize on all of the. Yeah,
there's so many.
It's people, a ridiculous amount of people who are not ever able to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
When there are really easy ways for them to be able to do that, but you haven't afforded them that option or that opportunity, and it was never fair.
Yeah, great, agreed. TK comes back and says 105 roster limit in football, no cap on scholarships, but 105 limit roster.
Yes, again, the previous limit was 85 scholarships, right? So they're raising that to 105 scholarships, but eventually phasing out the walk-ons. Now, the current walk-ons, the designated athletes, the DSAs, are protected for the immediate future, but eventually schools are going to have to get down to that 105 limit unless we see changes to that before it's time for that to go into effect, right? The previous roster size average was 124, which included those walk-ons. So what you're looking at is you're looking at about 20 kids who are not every year that are not going to have the opportunity to even be on a roster, walk on or scholarship or otherwise. And I don't think that's right.
This is the one thing. I'll say this. I'm sorry to cut you off. This is the one thing I think that does help some of these smaller schools is that you get talent that is fringe, Power 4, fringe, whatever, that have to, if they want a scholarship now, they've got to bump down to a group of 5 school and go get that opportunity to play there. And it may help some of these guys be able to get some better athletes on their teams. That's the one portion of this that I think does actually help the little guys.
Yeah. I mean, whether that talent is talent that can actually help you or not, right? Like, I mean, I think at the Power 4 level, where you're bursting with talent at the seams, there may be some guys who can go down a few notches, but you still have to convince them that that's the right, like, you know, some of these kids don't want to go down to those schools.
For sure.
And,
right.
you know,
but they're not going to have a choice now, though. It's like, well, there's no scholarship here for it. The way you can't be on the team. So if you want to play football, you got to go over here and play.
Yeah. It's not even about, right, like not having a scholarship. It's just, you can't be on it, right? The roster size is limited to 105. Right. So it didn't even matter if they wanted you to walk on or not. You can't. There are more changes coming to this. This is a start. And look, this is what people need to understand in business and life. There was never going to be any perfect version of this when they got started. But for so many, the people who didn't want this to happen have been using that to put this off for years and years. And that's part of how we got here. Right. They're mucking it up and they're like, oh, but what about this? And we didn't think about that. And we didn't think about this. And then years pass, decades pass, and nothing has been done. So they're saying, look, it may not be perfect, but here's the starting point. We'll revise, we'll refine as we go. You have to start somewhere. That's why I'm like, okay, that it's not perfect right now. They're going to figure it out. You know, somebody was going to get screwed. Eventually, somebody was going to get screwed on the front end. And I like that the judge stepped in and said, what we're not going to do is we're not going to screw these walk-on athletes who just got cut.
Right.
Like, at least not initially. And then they're giving them a period of time to adjust to the new reality.
Yeah. Before we get to the other half, I'm going to go with Stephen Allen's question. Is Mike G, how many wins does Auburn get this season?
Everybody keeps asking me that question. I think the answer is 8. The answer is start at 8 and then surprise me from there. I think that's what. I just think that you've got to start at 8. 7 for me doesn't move the needle. And Vegas set the over under at 7.5. So at 7, you underachieved. And I don't think underachieving anything should be part of the conversation when we talk about expectations for the third year of Hugh Freeze's tenure at Auburn, particularly with the resources that have been available to him to build the sort of roster that we're seeing now. I think most people can agree. We've done it. Ike and I have been doing these Friday breakdowns of the position groups. And every time we get to one, Auburn is more talented than they were 2-3 years ago. Much more talented. So there's more optimism around quarterback than we've ever seen. There is way more optimism around wide receiver than I think we've seen at any position group at Auburn in the last 10 years. This might be one of the best position groups at Auburn of all time, given the opportunity, but they certainly have the talent to be one of the best position groups at Auburn that we've ever seen across all the position groups. Defensively, they're making strides. I mean, with where Auburn is at from a talent perspective, it's really hard not to look at the schedule and say, okay, 8 wins. 8 wins.
All right. Well, speaking of Auburn and their talent, that talent extends beyond just the football team. There's talent all over the plains. And the question is, how is Auburn going to allocate funds to make sure that all of these talented athletes get opportunities and these talented coaches are able to compete in all of these different arenas across these sports? Mike G found this tweet. I want to make sure I give credit to the young man who tweeted this out. It is Greg Chick PhD on Twitter. He has a graphic here I wanted to bring up, and it's showing total pool revenue by institution compared to a salary cap. So the red line here is the cap, and this is spending above the cap for each of these institutions. And you can see goes in order from left to right here for those not or that are listening to this on pod. Big 10, SEC, ACC, Big 12. I guess that's the American Athletic Conference there. Conference USA, the MAC. I don't even know what this
Midwest
conference is. Is the Midwest
or Mountain
Conference?
West? Mountain West.
Mountain West. There you go. Pac-12, and then Southern. I guess that's I don't know what the last one.
No, I can't help you on that one. I don't know what that is.
Anyway, so all of these conferences here, and you can see the spending on this graph, and I'll try to make sure that Mike, have you already retweeted this for people to be able to see?
I have not retweeted this. No.
Yeah, if you can retweet that at the War Rapport out there so we can so people have frame of reference for this conversation that we're having. And the reason why I wanted to pivot to this and I wanted to wait on the second half of this is looking at just the SEC numbers, because I've heard so many people say, or not just, they've had these, try to have these arguments with me. The Sun Belt was the end one. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony.
Is the reason why Auburn has been having success in football is because Auburn's spending so much money, and I bring his graphic back up here. For those that can't see on the graphic, because it is a little small out there, Auburn is about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, either 5th or 6th from the last here in spending right now. 5th from the last in spending right now in the conference. Texas, the bottom half of the SEC, Auburn is spending right now. So this argument that the reason why Auburn is being successful in football is because they're spending, that's just not, that is not real. There's no metric that shows Auburn's outspending other schools to be able to be successful in these sports. And again, even if the lion's share of that money went towards football, it's just not a reality. And we know that basketball is getting their portion of this. But here's how I want to pivot into this. And I know you have some thoughts on that specifically, Mike G, is how do you think that this money allocation is going to happen for Auburn? And how is it going to impact these coaches and these programs outside of football and men's basketball that really need to be able to get some better support to be able to compete out there?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this 20.5 is actually 18 because 2.5 of it is going towards scholarships across the Olympic sports. So 18 is the pool that they have control over to be able to say we are paying athletes deals from that number. How they appropriate the 2.5 across the other sports, that's going to be something I think that's going to have to be regulated. It's going to be much debated. But, as far as the 18 is concerned, there are certain schools who I don't want to say who they are exactly because of who gave me that information, that are allocating 4 to 5% of what's available to their women's basketball programs. Right, that essentially comes out to about $800,000-$900,000, and they've said, "Hey, look, we have enthusiasm around outside donations to football and men's basketball. So it's more important that we make sure that we set a safe floor for women's basketball than these other sports because they're going to get theirs." Whether it comes from this cap or not, right? And I think the schools that are under that line that you see are the ones where you really have to worry about whether their Olympic sports are going to get anything at all, right? Like if you're below that cap line, those are the schools where I worry for women's basketball and those, in those, even if you're close to that line, you have to be below it. If you're close to it, that means there's probably not a whole lot over the cap. that's going to be available to you.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry. Can you just pull that graph up one more time? Like, look at Texas. Now we know we've known that Texas has had money, right? Texas is the school that this doesn't matter to you. They have mind-blowing money. They don't care about your $20.5 million. We're sitting on $500 million regularly. That's the rolling bank. That's the daily rolling bank balance. Every day Texas wakes up and they say, yep, we're rich as shit. We don't care. But as you dip down, and this is when you start to get to the Big 12 and the ACC, you see that their top conference school is below more than half of the Big 10 in the SEC.
Right.
Yeah.
According to this guy, if Kansas is the richest school, they have less money than more than half of the institutions. And we talk about where Auburn at, they got less money than Auburn. Auburn is fifth from the bottom.
Right.
Of the
Auburn
SEC.
is akin to Kansas in spending in money that they have to spend, according to this graph.
So, I mean, that's how far behind these other conferences are. That's crazy to think about. But, you know, even Auburn, they're above the line that they're not really worried about that 20. That's why On to Victory isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I spoke to those guys over there on the Victory. Our guy, Brett Whiteside, he's been running that organization for a number of years. You know, and, you know, from a business standpoint and just as a friend, hey, man, are you okay? Are y'all going away? He's got no worries.
Yeah.
They're sticking around. There's still a need for them.
There is 100% still going to be a need. And to your point, I would be very interested. I am anxiously waiting. Now, I know he put out a statement recently, speaking of the AD put out a statement here for Auburn recently in regard to all of this. But I'm interested to see what coach or what I call him Coach Cohen. He was a former coach, but John Cohen is going to do as far as these allocations are concerned. So
I'm curious about the PR of this too, because they're still going to need to keep fans engaged with donating to On the Victory. Like, that's still a thing, right? So don't think that that's going to go away. They still need the fans to be engaged and help to build up the NIL collective. That still continues to go because, again, as you saw by that chart, it's an arms race. Right. And so Auburn doesn't need to fall further behind, even though people are alleged that Auburn's spinning out the wazoo, which that's, according to that chart, is not proven to be the case. But you do want to remain competitive even in that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that what you're going to see is the Olympic sports, all the sports not named football, still need the collectives to provide the majority of their deals. Because the way
TK gives us the guidelines I missed out on earlier. Sorry to cut you off. $600 on the NIL. So anything above $600, and then the collectives just have to follow fair market value in order for whatever those deals are. So there's going to be some level of scrutiny in regard to that. But go ahead.
Yeah. We've known about the $600 number for a minute, right? Like, where, again, you know, if you watch the firesides, right, when the players come sit down with us, we break them off a little something. Right. If we make it over $600, then you got to go through all these reporting things. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, what I love about what we do is a lot of these players would sit down with us. They just want to sit down for free. Right. But, you know, we want to make it worth their time, certainly. And part of making it an NIL deal means that we don't have to go through the university's normal request structure for an interview.
The bureaucracy of it.
Yeah. Which usually means you're not going to respond to you. Yeah, right. Yeah, you send that email out. The answer's going to be no. Through, like, we're just going to pretend we didn't
left
get your
on red.
Yeah. But once we do the interview, what usually happens is a bunch of other media organizations come out of the woodwork and say, "How did these guys get so and so athlete?" Right. And, you know, in that SID department, they need to be able to say, that's an NIL deal that has nothing to do with us. Work your own NIL deal out with the athlete and you can do it too. So, a lot of those organizations seem very unwilling to want to spend that money. They're very content with whatever they get from the pool press conference situation. That's never been us. We always want to sit down and have the one-on-one, whether it's an athlete or the coach. That's why we sit down with Hugh Freeze ourselves every year. Because we want to have those more intimate conversations where we ask the questions not only that we want to ask, but that you guys want asked as well too, of the athlete and of the coaches. So, that $600 thing is about making sure that we're not scrutinizing some $5 deal and that some kid is getting suspended or his livelihood threatened because he took $50 from somebody. Right. That's always been the dumb part of this to me. In the past, the NCAA has ruined lives over under $100.
Right.
That's
a handshake.
Absolutely crazy to me. So now they're saying, hey, there's no way for us to police all these under $600 deals that are going to be happening. So just let them happen.
Yeah. So just in regard to some of these other sports, though, like, what would you already talked about, a fair compensation floor. What would you like to see happen with, women's basketball, with freaking track and field, who's been doing amazing, equestrian, softball? Like, there's so many sports that I feel like have achieved above what, first and foremost, Nike. We just saw our last competition that's going to happen in Under Armour now that that baseball is out of the College World Series. So we are officially moving on into the Nike era of Auburn sports here, coming up in a couple of weeks. But what kind of things would y'all like to see happen for some of these other sports as far as safe floors for them? Because it's a lot of decisions that have to be made about how they're going to make sure that this compensation happens for these folks.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a hater for this next part, but like, number one, there's a lot of people complaining that certain sports aren't getting enough. And quite honestly, they don't support those sports.
Right.
So what I would like to see is people get off your ass, stop complaining, and start supporting the sports that you're arguing need more money.
Right.
Now, this conversation has been really prevalent around women's basketball as of late, with people saying, well, they should be making as much money as the guys, like Caitlin Clark should be making as much money as LeBron James, or Angel Reese should be getting as much as Russell Westbrook. No, the hell they shouldn't.
That's not real. I mean, again, I think that they should be fairly compensated, but like there's that the value of their contracts just isn't.
Yeah, look, man, I'm going to use some buzzwords here and just bear with me here. But a lot of really annoying feminists who have never watched a single hour of sports in their life arguing for why
Mike is going there right now.
They should be getting paid more than male athletes who drive billions of dollars in revenue for their sports. Yet you ask them, when's the last time you went to a WNBA game? I've never been to one. When was the last time you watched one? Can't remember. And outside of Caitlin Clark or Angel, they can't tell you anything about
10 WNBA players.
Right. No. And so why I said that I think that Auburn is missing an opportunity is those girls from the college level helped put women's basketball on the map in a way that it hasn't been before. And Ike and I have this conversation about there have been some really good women's basketball players before Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all these girls. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that those girls are as talented as some of the greats that came before them. Like, there are a lot of people who just don't understand how good Candace Parker was.
Yeah.
In her day. Like, Shamika Holtzclaw, like, some of the girls that just ballers. But the reality is that nobody was watching them.
Yeah.
That's just a reality. I'm not saying they weren't good. I'm saying, look, now, because of the advent of college sports and college TV contracts, we have more access to Caitlin Clark at the college level than we've had some of the best WNBA players at the pro level.
Yeah.
And then that fandom followed them to the WNBA, and now you're seeing this thing explode. That's why all these old heads hating on these young girls for bringing attention to their sport doesn't make sense to me.
It happened in the NBA too, and I think this is where people forget there was a point in time where people thought the NBA was a foolish league to begin. It wasn't making any money. Owners are going bankrupt trying to support these teams, and then Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came on the scene.
Yeah.
And then
Jordan.
Michael Jordan came on the scene. And the sport transformed into this billion-dollar industry because they had athletes that they could put the face of and say.
And you had Team USA. Team USA when they did that world tour
situation. Yeah.
That was the gasoline on the fire.
The 92 Dream Team,
that was pouring gasoline on the fire, and the league took off.
But people forget that there were times when the contract that Michael Jordan had to play basketball was people were like, why would you ever pay a basketball player that much? Michael Jordan's biggest contract looks like a mid-level player right now.
Yeah.
So yes, they give it time to grow because the sport does have enough entertainment equity. I don't care what I'm biased. I love women's basketball. I actually happen to think it's entertaining, but I do think that there is enough entertainment equity out there that yes, this sport can grow. That does not mean that, we're kind of straying off at the point for how it's going to help Auburn and their athletes, but that does not mean that I feel like the compensation for Sanaya Richardson, who's going to be the point guard at Auburn women's basketball coming up, true freshman in here, is going to be the same as what it should be for Tahad Pettiford.
Correct.
Not what I'm arguing.
I think that, again, if you're one of the people that's complaining about it, buy tickets. Season tickets to Auburn women's basketball is like $25. Season tickets. Whether you show up or not, you could spend $25 and help support that program for a year. And then give the tickets away to would show up if they got free tickets. There are easy ways to support these things that the average person is not doing while also complaining about what that sport is not getting. The truth is, if you want them to get a larger portion of the pie, support them in any of the number of ways. Retweet them on social media, go show up to their games, buy tickets. I'm sick of hearing people complain about them not getting while actively not supporting. And the whole, we're just going to support them because they're women thing is dumb to me, because those feminists are not watching sports, period.
That boy pod right now.
They're the wrong people to be holding that flag up, because they're not going to ever buy tickets to a game. So we're handing out participation trophies. The market is what drives the worth of those programs. People show up to Auburn. Look, man. I've seen gymnastics meets more full than some men's basketball games.
That's a fact.
At other schools. Gymnastics is packed. The support for that program is incredible, and to me, if you ask me,
thank you, Suni Lee, for helping to spread it on. By the way,
yes,
they deserve a bigger portion of the pie than most Olympic sports, because their people show up to their meets.
But that underscores what I mean by the brilliance, I think, of Auburn gymnastics was we do have an athlete that we can make the face of our program. We're going to use that to drive the marketing in that direction.
Right.
But Suni Lee does not happen for Auburn University in an era where NIL does not exist.
Does not exist. Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And so making the investment to say we're going to make sure Suni Lee can come play here, can come compete here at Auburn, helped grow that. So,
and that's why Suni Lee can say, I think I will go back to school.
Yeah, I think that's what's always made the South different when it comes to sports is because our women do actually like football. And they know football. So when they show up to games, they know what they're watching.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no knock to the northern mamas, right? But I'm telling you, our southern women, they know football.
Yes, I mean, it's the culture here. The football,
right? Yeah, they're going to show up to games, right? They have every right to crow about it because they show up in support.
Yeah.
They cheer just as loud. They spend their hard-earned dollars as well, too. All I'm saying is, outside of that, if you want the ability to be able to crow about these other sports, show up. Show up. I mean, when Bruce Pearl got started at Auburn, he went door to door asking people to show up to men's basketball games. Caesar, you and I were and Ike were in school, and B Will were in school at Auburn at a time where you could find men's basketball tickets outside on the ground, outside of beer eats.
Yeah.
This isn't hyperbole, man. This is for real. This was a real thing. Gymnastics meets were not packed back then.
No. Y'all were going to gymnastics meets for completely different reasons.
Right, yeah. Well, we gonna talk about that. That's for another show. Those are some good times, but yeah, I regret some of those actions deeply. Regrettable. It was regrettable. But the point is that we have an opportunity now to support those programs in a way. And this is what I love about what Greg Sankey has done with the SEC, right? These TV rights deals where back then when we were in school, you could not catch every Auburn women's basketball game on TV, not even close. Now, there's no game you can't see through some subscription service at least, but for the most part, the SEC network gives us access to all these games. We've got more access to women's sports than we've ever had, ever. So now that we have the access, show up to games, turn them on, and then it is the program's responsibility to put a product on the court that people want to watch.
Right.
Now, I talked about some of the women's basketball players that were really great back in the day. I think what's good about the game today is there are more great players than there have ever been because women, like female athletes, are just getting better. They're more athletic than they've ever been. You know, you've heard us talk on this show repeatedly about the advent of sports nutrition and the availability that they have of training, advanced training equipment and techniques that are just producing better athletes. High school athletes are just better all around.
Right.
And now that we have that enhanced athlete and we have the TV rights deals to be able to see how much better that they've become. Now's the time, man, to support those programs. But, you know, like, I mean, look, when Larry Vickers got hired, I told everybody, like, if you're one of those Johnny Harris hater people, I didn't know what to do with you because she was squeezing juice from a turnip her entire time here. And he's a really good X's and O's coach. I think that he has a chance to do what Johnny did and even better, but he's going to need the support. His job in year one is to put something on the court where people can clearly see the progression. I've been asking for patience for him because it's hard to overcome the floor that they've set for the support, which is really low. It is hard. But yeah, it delves into a different kind of societal conversation. Caesar, you and I have had conversations off camera.
Patience, but also too, Mike, patience also means managing expectations even when Auburn does experience some success. Because what tends to happen is when you see success or improvement year over year, we start shooting for the moon when the floor is still the floor in terms of resources, right? Yeah. So when you say patience, that's what you're talking about is understand what they have to work with in light of the product they're producing.
Yeah. Look, I mean, end of the day, so the great thing about, I think, college sports is that our love for our schools supersedes even sometimes our interest in certain sports. Yeah. So I may not enjoy women's basketball, but I enjoy Auburn women's basketball. Does that make sense? I may not enjoy baseball as much as the average person, but I enjoy watching Auburn baseball for sure. I'm going to show up to a baseball game, it's going to be an Auburn baseball game. And that's part of what makes college sports great. And I don't think the NIL destroys that. I think it only reinforces that now we have a way to give our money more directly to the thing that we love and help support it and see it grow and take that school pride. That's why we roll tumors for everything we win.
Yeah.
Albie wins the mascot national championship. Roll it.
Thanks.
Golf team wins the national championship. Roll it. I may not watch golf all year until Auburn's in it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have a way to support. And I think that, look, man, but what the other side of the coin that's also fair, Caesar, is that if it is something that I naturally don't have an interest in, you can make me interested in it by being good. I will tell you, I was not much of a golf fan until Tiger Woods started dominating when we were in high school. Right? Back in 97, I think was when he won his first Masters. It was, I think, my sophomore year in high school. Like, when Tiger was doing something that we haven't seen in sports ever.
But to go, and even using that to go back to the WNBA, that is why these sports need a transcendent star.
Yes,
right. It doesn't mean that the other players aren't good. There's some people who are they're just the one.
They're bigger than the sport. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to ride the wave. Like, don't hate on this person just because they're helping everyone, including former athletes of the sport. They're helping everyone.
That's kind of been the argument about Caitlin Clark, right?
Yeah.
Love her or hate her, she's bringing eyes to the sport that have not been on the sport previously.
This is a dub for everybody.
Yeah, it's a dub for everybody in women's basketball, right?
It's a dub, man.
I understand that some people may feel like, I think there's a way to have this conversation without crapping on all the athletes that came before Caitlin Clark.
Absolutely.
That helped lay the foundation for what she's in. I mean, she didn't have this opportunity if those athletes didn't suffer through that period where nobody was watching the sport. However, you can't help when it happens. It just happened.
It just happens.
She was the star in the social media age where we've had more access. So she's the jump off. Like, if we had social media 12 years from now ago,
it probably could have been Candace.
Somebody else. Yeah.
It probably would have been Candace.
Yeah, Candace Parker or Maya Moore or any of the UConn girls. Yeah. Right. I mean, Diana Taurasi, like, people didn't understand what a great basketball player she was.
Amazing.
Still, to me, in my mind, the greatest women's basketball player of all time is Diana Taurasi by accomplishment. However, she's not getting all the attention that Caitlin Clark is getting, but that's fine. Right? Like, there are errors and levels to this. And I mean, it's the same way, like you said, Jordan's biggest deal is like a below average deal in the NBA now. It doesn't mean that those guys were better than Jordan. It just means, hey, look, man, this is where the game is at now when these guys are good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I think the interest in the NBA that fell off after Jordan retired and kind of before the Lakers started going on their runs. I mean, there was a big drop off. Like, people left the sport of basketball until the next transcendent star came along to help bolster interest in the game again.
Yeah.
I know I stopped watching for a few years. Now, you might say, oh, well, then you weren't really a basketball fan. Okay, cool. That's my point. You need those eyes on the sport too. And so, as bringing it back to college to wrap the conversation, I would just say there's an opportunity here for these coaches to grow their programs, put a product on the court, on the field, whatever the respective sport is that people can be interested in, while you have all the eyes and the media coverage on your sport. Yeah. This is why we take time. Like, this year I covered baseball, volleyball some, and women's basketball and some gymnastics. And still there were people saying, Mike G, why don't you come to our sport? I was like, well, listen, I'm one guy. But we're working our way around. It's not to say that volleyball isn't deserving.
And Ike has been, I mean, we didn't do it today, but Ike was doing, a certain segment where he gives updates on what's happening in some of the other sports outside of the major ones we cover. And so that is something that the War Report has been devoted to, is giving exposure to some of the other sports that wouldn't get that exposure elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we're committed to, and it's something that we'll continue to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this House settlement, ultimately, to wrap our conversation today, is a good thing for college sports. It's a step in the right direction. It's not perfect yet, But anybody expecting perfection at this stage in the process is missing the point, right? They've used that lack of perfection to delay this process for decades. Now it's happening. Just embrace the imperfect version of it for now. And as they move through this process, they'll figure out how to make it better. They'll figure out, because things are going to pop up that couldn't be addressed on the top end. Problems will arise that could not have been foreseen, but will need to be dealt with. There are things that will happen, I think, that will help us move this forward, Caesar. And ultimately, all this is a good start to figuring out what the long-term solution for NIL is going to be at the college level.
Agreed. Good conversation. I'll grab some of you guys' comments here before we get out of here. So Nina says, ladies clinic on the 14th. Questions I should ask.
Oh, is this the football clinic that they're talking about? I think they do like a thing that Sonina is talking about where they invite, it's like a ladies clinic for football. And it's pretty cool as well, too, where they go and they, do some active things and they go. I mean, look, you should ask the questions you want. If you had a question about the game, those are the questions you should ask. That clinic, from what I understand, is really popular, and it's done so well, and I love that. It's a great way. It's a very unintimidating way for women to get a closer look at the game, without male condescension, if that makes sense, right? Like, I like the idea.
Enjoy, Sonina. Hope you enjoy yourself. Definitely go out there and you've watched enough. You've commented enough. You know what to ask. You ask good questions and make good comments here. So I trust that you get whatever your question is asked answered. And you also gifted a War Report membership as well. So thanks to you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you for your support. Thanks for everybody for their support. Mike, tell people how they can support beyond just watching, sir.
Well, she gave that membership, but you can just hit that join button and get yourself one. $5.99 a month will get you there. We appreciate you guys for doing that. Also want to thank our title sponsor, Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron, workout, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Also visit our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code Rapport to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. And our friends at the Vibe Vault, you can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area, or even in the Auburn Opelika area, don't mind making the drive down, please do so. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. Get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Guys, check us out on podcasts. We are everywhere doing lots of great audio-only content. We appreciate our community for helping us out on the audio side, but the Auburn Express, Uptempo, College Loop, and Just a Sec pods, as long as the War Report Gaming channel, they're doing a little something over there. Go check out all that great audio-only content. We appreciate you guys for supporting us there. Help us climb those podcast charts.
NCAA football is coming out, so definitely check out the War Report Gaming channel, as I'm sure they're going to be all over that. Yep. Definitely check us out. Guys, again, some of the things that you can do that's free. Please be sure to share this video with those that you know will appreciate content along the lines of what we discussed today. Smash that like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. You can also interact with us on social media. You can find us there at The War Report on X as well as Instagram. You can even find us on TikTok at TW Rapport. That's it for now, guys. We will definitely be dropping content throughout the week as news drops. You know what it is, y'all. It's the War Report. Have enjoyed the rest of your weekend. See you soon.